keep their microphones off when they're not speaking, because it sometimes creates an echo.
All right. Time's valuable. So good evening, good afternoon, greetings to everyone wherever you are. My name is Mukhtaru. Everybody calls me Muki, and it's my honor to facilitate this second dialogue um, between Professor Cam Scholey and Derek Hendricks. I want to start by just welcoming everybody, thanking everybody for taking time to be with us. Now we are here to try and learn as much as we can about two very good ideas um, that we need to be able to have successful organizations. So I would like to encourage, first of all, those of everybody who's here, I'd like to encourage you to put on your cameras if it's possible, so we can get to look at everybody's faces if it's possible. So please put on your cameras if you would like, but we really would like to encourage that. So thank you for that. The other thing is, if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone so that we can be able to avoid any technical issues that come with having a microphone on and picking up something in the background. We're trying to record and we're trying to stream this on other platforms. So thank you once again and welcome. I'd like to start first by introducing Professor Cam Scholey. Professor Cam Scholey is from Canada, and he's been a teacher, a speaker, an advisor, a thought leader, mainly around his professional career has been mainly around strategy and strategic leadership. He's associated with the Royal Military College of Canada, McMaster University, Queen's University, and he's worked extensively on the balanced scorecard, strategy map, and objectives and key results. I actually met Professor Scholey through his work. But he has very good work on YouTube that I found. He talks, gives very good material on strategy, the balance scorecard, on strategy map, and on objectives and key results. So that's how I met him. The next person, of course, in terms of the dialogue, is Derek Hendricks. I think a lot of people here know Derek. Derek has been a consultant in different parts of the world, in Southern Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, for more than 20 years. He specializes in strategy, and Derek is the originator of Orgtology, which is the other side of the dialogue tonight. So we're very happy to have everybody here. We're very excited that you're here, and we hope that there will be a lot of participation following the dialogue. So the purpose of the dialogue really is to just be able to explore, like I said, uh, um, two very good ideas about how to make organizations more successful. Okay, there's on the one side you have the balance scorecard, which has been around for a long time, developed by Kaplan and Norton, and then there's Orgtology that was developed by Derek Hendricks. So we just want to explore. I mean, there are many things that we hope that we can be able to gain from this, which is a better understanding of the balance scorecard and a better understanding of Orgtology. So, and like I said, I hope we have a lot of participation from the people who have joined us tonight. We're very excited about that. I'm going to start with Professor Scholey. Professor Scholey, I want you to just give us a sense of what the balanced scorecard is. I'd like you to just lay out the basic principles and their practical applications as far as the balanced scorecard is concerned. Over to you.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Mookie, for those kind words about my work. The balanced scorecard is a tool that takes some emphasis off the financial performance. Financial performance is always going to be important, but it's not the only important thing going on. So I would say the 1980s, early 90s, companies were saying, hey, we need more than just the financial performance to lead ourselves the best way we can. And so Kaplan and Norton that Mookie mentioned, they came up with this balanced scorecard, which has 4 perspectives: financial, customer, internal processes, and 4th is learning and growth. And what their position is we need to look at performance from all 4 of those different perspectives. And that's the way you can best manage and lead an organization. And so they were never saying that the financials aren't important. They're just saying, let's look at financials plus these other things. And it was quite successful for several years, but it also ran into some problems because some companies were putting the wrong things in the balanced scorecard. They were inserting things that, if they were done, were to the detriment of other things. So it was kind of hit and miss what people were putting in the scorecard. And that's when Kaplan and Norton, the same 2 guys, said, hey, you know what? We're going to create a tool called strategy mapping, which uses the same 4 perspectives as the balanced scorecard. So we're still using the financial, the customer, the internal process, and the learning and growth. But we're going to literally map out the strategy in pieces and make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons, that everything's lining up properly. So if we want to achieve this, we need to do this. Or you can flip that and say, if we do this, we anticipate that we're going to achieve this. So it was putting some real logic into the balanced scorecard model. And so people who were doing strategy mapping and balanced scorecard were having a lot more success if they use those 2 tools together. And I'll leave it at that for now, Mookie. I think that's enough of a preface, and then you feel free to ask any more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I just wanted to, actually, you've touched a lot already on strategy map. I wanted to see if there's any way you can just, if you think there's more elaboration you need, please elaborate on that a little bit more. But the other area that I want you to touch on is objectives and key results. Because in looking at your site on YouTube, you have a lot about OKR, and I read a little bit. I'm not an expert on that yet, but I read a little bit, and it seems like they all sort of continuum. The balanced scorecard, then the strategy map, and OKR. So can you just go into OKRs a little bit and see how they fit into the balanced scorecard wall?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll pretty much pick up where I left off. Let me start with strategy mapping, or continue with strategy mapping. So just so everyone's clear, strategy mapping, again, it uses the same 4 perspectives as the balanced scorecard. And then from that, we can choose our objectives very carefully because they've been validated through the strategy map. So that's how that strategy mapping balanced scorecard duo worked. Now, a bit more about strategy mapping, because I haven't said much about it. Let me just explain the steps involved, and I think that'll make more sense for people. Step 1, when you're strategy mapping, is to choose your overriding objectives. So why do you exist as an organization? What are you driving toward? So overriding objective is a wide term. It could mean it should mean purpose, but also your financial objectives if you're a for-profit organization. So step 1 is to choose your purpose and overriding objective. Step 2 is to choose your value proposition. Okay. And then we get into the steps with the perspectives: financial, customer, internal process, and then learning and growth. Okay, so that's how we do the strategy map. So for years, companies did well with the strategy map and then following it up with a balanced scorecard. Let me tell you about the second shortcoming of the balanced scorecard. We talked about the first earlier and how strategy mapping helped course correct that. The second issue with balanced scorecarding is it's very cumbersome to track every month. There's a lot of measures and data and metrics and spreadsheets. And so it becomes a full-time job just to run and manage the balanced scorecard once it's complete. And so that was turning off a lot of companies that didn't want to spend that kind of tedious, laborious effort. That's where OKRs come in. Okay, so OKR stands for objectives and key results. So similar to the balanced scorecard where we have our objectives and our measures, now what we're doing with OKRs is saying, let's use those objectives, but instead of having really rigid measures that we have to track each month, and it's just a really tedious, laborious process, let's take those measures and just look for key results. So if we're doing things right, what do we expect that we should have happen to us? So the objective might be to maximize the traffic driven to my website. Okay, and then the key results would be, I want to see a doubling of traffic every month or 3 months or whatever you say. So you have your objective, what you are striving toward, and then your key results. How are you going to know whether or not you achieved that objective? Okay, and that I'll leave it at that again, Mookie, and then again, you're welcome to follow up with questions.
Yes, I think you've already alluded to the challenges. Okay, so the challenges of practicing the balanced scorecard. Can I just get you to just summarize with that before I go to direct with the Orgtology method?
Sure. So you want me to summarize the balanced scorecard challenges?
Yeah,
Yeah.
challenges of applying the balanced scorecard.
Yeah. Okay. So let me back up to challenge number one was, so folks, picture a grid with 4 corners. Okay. And there's a financial, a customer, a process, and a learning and growth perspective. Okay. In each of the corners. And people are saying, okay, well, we know we want the balance to measure our performance, but within each of those 4 areas, we don't know exactly what we're looking for. So the financial, maybe we do, right? We want to maximize profits or double them from last year or whatever. But when you look at learning and growth, the average person doesn't know what to put in a balanced scorecard that's going to indicate whether they're improving on learning and growth. Okay, so that was an issue for companies. They were driving the wrong things. I'll give you an example. Okay, there's a company called Analog Devices, and they were very successful. Made little circuits and were very successful through the 1980s. And they were actually one of the first companies to adopt the balanced scorecard. Okay. And let me tell you the reason they were successful, this company, was in their value proposition was being first to market. They were the innovators. They were the first to have the microchips out. They were always pouncing and being first to market, and everyone was copying them and always chasing them. When they put a balanced scorecard in, just because someone probably told them this or they read it in a book, they had all these measures that were around cost efficiency. Okay, so just to be clear here, the value proposition for them is first to market. That means not being overly cost efficient. It means spending money on R&D, spending money on new products. Okay, but their balanced scorecard had all of these cost efficiency things like a Walmart would have. Well, you can't be an Apple type of company, first to market, leading the way, and be measuring Walmart type metrics, right? And so it collided, and their stock dropped. It tailed way off, and they really suffered because they had used a balanced scorecard. Okay, and they were the company that made people start to say, hey, if they failed with it. We're not touching it either. And that's what brought strategy mapping in. Okay, so that's downside number one of the balanced scorecard is the risk of putting the wrong things in and having things go south on you. And then the second issue with the balanced scorecard is the amount of tedious labor involved. Even if you have good software, you still have to go chase little numbers and do these little computations to make everything bubble up into a dashboard. And people don't want to do that. And OKRs lose a lot of the detail. So you lose a little bit of value in the detail, but OKRs save you a ton of time that from a cost benefit analysis usually makes OKRs the superior choice now to the balanced scorecard.
So, Prof, I'm hearing here that there's a trade-off. First of all, there's usually a trade-off that you have to be involved in. And I guess with the company that adopted the balanced scorecard, they had a winning formula and they mastered the formula. So that there's a lesson to be learned there as far as applying any of the methodologies that we are learning.
Yes, you need to be very careful. Do a pilot and monitor the pilot very closely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Let's bring in the second part of the dialogue. Derek, so the same thing, just like I do with Professor Scholey, I would like to ask you to just talk about Orgtology, lay out the principles and the practical application of Orgtology.
Thank you. Thanks, Mookie. Thanks for the nice introduction, and thank you, Cam, for this opportunity to dialogue this with you. All right. So, as Cam said, there's been a very strong financial focus. From the first industrial revolution, we measured things in terms of financial statements, and the Kaplan and Norton came in and says, no, but you need more perspectives on the organization. You can't just view it from one perspective. You can, for instance, do a lot of things to make books look good, but the organization's not necessarily healthy. So if you focus on your customers and your learning and growth and your business processes, you create a holistic health for the organization. And I think that's very much where Orgtology began. It was buying into that idea that the financial perspective is not the only thing to look at, although very important, as Cam said. What we bring to the table is we're saying that you can't have 4 windows that accurately assesses the entire organization. We're splitting things into abstract and concrete things. So we're saying any organization has a very concrete construct. I've been a process engineer for a number of years, and one thing I found is that 75% of all organizations are similar. They do the same things. HR is HR. You might call it the human capital investment unit, but when I ask them, what do you do? They say, well, we recruit, we select, and so forth. So 75% of all organizations run on similar constructs. And if you take it industry specific, like let's say you take the mining industry, it would go up to 98%. Now that bit that's not generic, that 2%, 5%, maybe 10%, is a big bit, is a big piece. If you take human beings, 99.9% of us share the same DNA. So we might look different, but aliens won't confuse a group of humans with horses, for instance. They would know that these are humans. So we're extremely alike, but that 0.1% makes a big difference. That's what we call the X factor. And we're saying that you cannot understand these things in the same way. It would be like trying to assess your intelligence with a blood test, or trying to assess your personality type with blood pressure. Your body works in a different way than the mind. You can't assess them in the same way. That doesn't mean that they are separated or two independent things. It just means that they don't have the same rules. So we're saying that abstract things and concrete things have different rules. And in that, an organization can not only be viewed through perspectives, but it should also be viewed through functionality. Let me share the screen. I hope I can share. Yes, I can. I've got this slide. I've opened a few slides thinking that some of them might be useful. But yeah, you could see that your operational environment is your performance environment. Sorry, no, this is the wrong. This is not what I was looking for. So we have a model, a level 0 model, where we look at the organization's health, and we look at it extremely specifically. You know, we look at the process flows and the rules and regulations that hold them together, and the targets which they must achieve, and the outputs which they deliver, and so forth. So the level 0 model has 5 functional areas. The first one would be resources, resource efficiency. So how efficient are your resources? That would be your people, your money, your assets, and to a certain level, your intelligence that you manage in the organization. Then we would look at core business. Then we would look at relationships. Any organization to survive has to have a number of relationships with customers, with suppliers, with employees, stakeholders, board members, shareholders. So there's a number of relationships that has to be managed. We have to manage our risk. We have to ensure that our risks are contained, that the organization is safe. So we need to mitigate risks, and we need to have business continuity plans for disasters that might happen. And then lastly, transformation. We need to change. So that would be your operational construct, and those are not perspectives, they are functional clusters. But where we change, we would go and look at perspectives, because the future is something that you negotiate. It's not something that you communicate. Operations can be communicated. In other words, you've got the authority, you control it. You can decide to go left or right, but you can't do that with your strategic environment. That's the environment that you don't have full control over, so you have to negotiate that. And there we work with perspectives. And where the balanced scorecard has 4 perspectives, we have 3 perspectives. We have relationship transformation. How should we change our relationships? We have efficiency optimization. How can we be optimally efficient in what we do? Doing the right things? No, doing things right. And then we have relevance or efficiency, effectiveness, which is doing the right things. So it's relationship transformation, efficiency optimization, and effectiveness. Those would be the areas that you change. But it's very hard to make a linear relationship between we're going to change this and then that thing. So it's not a cause and effect, because you have 2 things coexisting. You know, if we, for instance, work on relationships, we could touch the entire organization, all departments, so it's all over the place. So we're saying that, and I can demonstrate to you guys if we have some time, you know, how we practically do this. But that change, which is affected then through your strategic environment, then feedbacks into the very precise operational environment. So I think what we're saying is that the organization needs a broader perspective than the balanced scorecard, and it needs to acknowledge that there are certain things that you can control and there are certain things that you cannot, and that the things that you cannot control are abstract. It's an environment which needs future view, which needs one to understand the big picture. But there's also a huge part of what you're doing which you can fully control. That's called your operational environment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we put a lot of effort from an Orgtology perspective to look at the X factor. The X factor is that small percentage that makes you unique, that turns you into what we call a singularity, something which has attributes that's different to anything else or any other entity or organization. So the X factor, but unlike what most of the motivational speakers propose, is that you know, you've got to think outside the box and be creative and all of that. We say that you need to have a very good construct. In other words, you need a very good, strong, calculable operational environment to have crazy ideas. You know, if Microsoft or Apple comes out with a crazy idea, they have a very strong, you know, iPod backing and iPhone backing. Microsoft has Windows and Office, you know. Coca-Cola has, I think, 4,000 brands. I'm not sure I speak under correction, but last time I checked was around about that. But 80% of their money is made from good old Coca-Cola as it was made 150 years ago, no change. So Coca-Cola can afford to go mad and, you know, try this and that, because if they fail, it's not going to kill them. Same with Microsoft. They can go into gaming and Xboxing and all types of things because they've got Office and Windows. It's not going to kill them if they fail. And therefore, we say that you can't just think outside the box and have crazy ideas. You need an environment that can contain that which is going to be born from that. So there's the two things then. The first would be that we separate abstract from concrete, abstract working as being understood through perspectives, and the concrete things being understood through functionality. And then we're also saying that your X factor is something that's the chaos that you need to allow into the organization to create its uniqueness, and that must be well managed. And that we have to have some type of scientific way to facilitate that.
Eric,
thanks, Mookie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I just, you know, being a student and practitioner of Orgtology, I think you've elaborated, but I want us to go back and maybe do a little summary. I think you didn't mention, although you alluded to it, I want you to talk about hypothesis 2F particularly, because you know the all roads of Orgtology lead from hypothesis 2F. The more time I've spent with it, the more I understand and enjoy and appreciate the whole issue of hypothesis 2X. So maybe, you know, maybe I want you to start from that point of view, just to go and talk about hypothesis 2X. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, it'll be good. But I think I want you to just focus on hypothesis 2X as something that you came up with to help you to be able to bring Orgtology to the world.
Thanks, Mookie. Yeah, you know, unlike many of the other models, Orgtology was born from immense complexity, you know, and it's now finding its way towards simplicity. So, you know, I need to try and find a way to make it as simple as possible. And I think that's a journey, and that's why it's wonderful to speak to people like Cam Scholey, because he has a way of really articulating something in a very practical, simple way. So hypothesis 2X basically tells us that organizations function within a duality, which means there's something abstract, which is what gives them their uniqueness, which is what gives them that which others cannot replicate. That's a Nelson Mandela or a Steve Jobs. You know, that's an iPod. That's something that you can't take and copy. It's unique. But there's also something very concrete, and that the concrete should always outweigh the abstract. In other words, if we spend energy in an organization, meaning the money on resources, assets, and people, it should always be 60% or more on the concrete stuff and 40% or less on the abstract stuff. Because where the abstract exceeds the concrete, then you have chaos. So order is very much on the concrete side, you know, the processes of policies and procedures and those type of things. I know Elon Musk would say, no, we think outside the box. But if you had to go to Tesla or SpaceX, you would find that it's an incredibly regulated environment. There's a lot of procedures and policies and process flows, and there's a lot of logic behind what they do. There's a lot of repetition behind what they do. So that needs to be the thing that must hold what it is that you want to change. And therefore you need to manage what we call an equilibrium between the energy that you spend on your functional areas of resource management and core business and relationships and risks, and the change that you want to bring. In other words, the running of the organization should always outweigh the changing of the organization. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the startup companies don't make it beyond 3 years. You know, I think it's something like 90%. Well, here in our region, only 10% of startups actually make it. And one of the reasons for that is that at the point when you start a business, the chaos is 100%. I mean, there's everything's a project. You don't have any processes in place except it, and that's why things like Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's, you know, they have a higher rate of success as a startup because they're already giving the processes and the brand and all the stuff that you have to work very hard for. So hypothesis X helps us to create an equilibrium. I'm saying an equilibrium because it's never 50-50. It could be 80-20, depending on an industry. I think that government departments should be 90% concrete and 10% abstract. I think a software company should be 45% abstract and 55% concrete. So it's different equilibriums. And then the X into X tells us that there's an X factor, which we're never going to precisely understand. It's something very abstract. But we need to find a way to look after it, and we need to find a way to interpret it. So in Orgtology, understanding the duality would have 4 theories. The one would be a theory of work, which is the relationship between processes, things that cycle, and projects, things that begin and end. We look at theory 2E, which is results, efficiency and effectiveness, and also intelligence, systems versus human intellect. But when we get to the X factor, we look at things, that things like paradigm, identity. So it's much more soft side. I think that's that's basically hypothesis 2X in the simplest way that I could explain it. Hope it helps.
Yeah, of course. Now let me make it even more simpler. You sort of look at the concrete side as your operational side, and then you look at your abstract side as mainly your strategic side. But of course, like you said, there's an interaction and coexistence. So it's not exclusively one or the other. They interact and coexist. And it's easy for me, at least I can speak for myself, and I'm sure that some of the people who practice Orgtology would agree with me. It makes it easier for me to see the organization, to understand the organization, because indeed every organization has a concrete side, which is your operations, where you produce goods and services on a daily basis, and then you have to have strategy. I mean, I've even been thinking that every organization basically needs these 2 things. You need operations and strategy. I don't care how small. You have to deal with change. You have to deal with relationships. You have to deal with those things that are going to help you to be able to continue to be an ongoing concern. All right. So anyway, you spoke a little bit about level 0, the level 0 model. The level 0 model is one of the main models in Orgtology. Okay, and it deals with the concrete side, and we talk about a process construct. Okay, where we're dealing with our operations. Can you just talk a little bit more about, and focus on the level 0 model and the process construct of Orgtology? I can't hear you. We don't have your microphone. Your microphone's off, Derek.
Sorry, man. I'm just trying to locate the model so that I can share it on the screen. I actually had all of that open, and then how it goes with Murphy.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to let me show you something to just. There we go. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. So that's the level 0 model. It's an incredibly simple model, but it has a massive application. We identify our risks here. We calculate our costs here. We draw our performance indicators from here. We use this as the basis for process engineering. We never ever go to an organization and do process engineering from their organogram, because the organogram was probably thought out by a few old guys in a room with a flip chart board. I mean, there's nothing scientific about that. So we try and find something generic that could help us, because from an Orgtology perspective, things have to be connected. Everything's connected. You can't have something loose. And the people who develop the organograms are not necessarily haven't looked at it from a scientific perspective. So the level 0 model says that we need to manage our resources, which is predominantly efficiency thing. We need to do our business. We need to manage our relationships. We need to contain our risks, and we need to change. If there's problems, obstacles, opportunities, you have two choices. You either have to change, and if you can't change, you need to contain the risk, which would include mitigation and the ability to continue business if something goes wrong. So that would be the level 0 model. Now, what we would typically do is, and this is why the objectives and key results, which, if I understand it correctly, is looking at the organization and then creating high level objectives, you know, and then putting it down as more measurable items to the front line, you know, where they turn into key results. But we have a different approach. So what we would do is, and this might look like a lot of work, but you know, it's done once. It grows. It changes in marginal incomes, in increments. So what we would typically do is let me just see if I've got. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so what we would typically do is we would take that level 0 and then turn it into a process flow. So we would take those areas and then look at how these things. Oh, here we go. I think I put it somewhere here. There we go. So this would typically be a process flow of an organization. You would see the red would be its parent, where it originated, and then we acquire, manage our resources, manage our stakeholder relationships, deliver our Orgtology-based services, monitor performance. If there's a problem or opportunity, can we change? If yes, we transform. If no, we contain risk. And then we color code them so that you can see the whole level 0 is covered there. Now we unpack these processes in layers. So the average company would probably be about between 60 and 80 processes. It would look something like this. So you would have this process structure. There's the level 0, then you have level 1, which is one process, and so it goes down, and they all break into, it's essentially really just one process. But then what we would do is we would unpack these processes. So this would, for instance, be a level 4 process. And we try and understand the flow of things. Now, when I have this, I've got all the data I need for the organization. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I know where to do it. I know who's going to do what. If I want performance indicators, this is this sales manager's process. So what must the sales manager do? Meet business development managers on a daily basis, go through. So it becomes a job description. We would then, you know, break it down into human resource hours and so forth. And we would have our targets. We shouldn't confuse targets with outputs. It's not the same thing. An output is what the process should deliver. So the purpose of the process defines the output. So here the purpose is ensure sales performance is understood, reported on, remedied. So the outputs of this process would be to understand sales performance, to report on sales performance, and to remedy it. But those are not the targets. The target's more about efficiency. So it's about making sure that the process works, and there's rules and regulations and so forth. Now, if you have this, you don't need a plan. You don't need objectives. This is the plan. It's something that cycles. It's something that we can exactly measure. It's the organization working as a neural network. But once something is not working, we need to change it. And that's when it goes to the strategic environment. And how would we change it? Well, we got 3 change perspectives. It's either we have to transform relationships, we have to increase our efficiency or optimize our efficiency, or we need to become more effective, have greater impact. So that would be the change. And that change would then again change this. So it's difficult to draw linear relationships. And I think that's why it's difficult to compare these things, because if you're saying a strategy map, it means it's a cause and effect system, but this doesn't work exactly like that. There's something changing the whole time, and there's something holding together that change the whole time. We call the holding together operation. So we call, you know, the change relevance. That's what we do to stay relevant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah. So there's a sort of a circular flow. And once again, all the way back to hypothesis 2x, there's a circular flow in the organization. wherein you have the operations feeding change in terms of strategy, and then strategy coming back to feed operations in that interconnected way to make the organization relevant and to make it efficient and relevant. So that's one of the things that I appreciate. So that's one of the two main areas. Maybe you can just quickly touch on the 5V model as the
Yeah.
fulcrum of a change in the organization.
Yeah, but I'm just hoping that we can get Cam in as well at some point. It would be good to get these things.
We will get him in. We'll get him in.
Yeah. So the 5E
Ready when
model
you are.
is the 5E model is simply it's actually a very useful tool, because what we do is we take the ultimate dream of an organization, the best of, or the great. Let's say they want to be the greatest provider in the world, on the planet. We got to chunk it down, because that's too far. And it's good. It's good to have that dream. I mean, the most successful organization, Elon Musk wants a Mars colony. Bill Gates wanted a computer on every desk in every home running on Microsoft software. Those are not only ambitious visions, but they're also impossible almost. So, but that drives you. So the 5E model simply breaks it down into 5 chunks. It says, that's your dream. Then where should you be in 9 years from now to be able to achieve that dream? Where should you be in 6 years from now to get closer to 9 years? Where should you be in 3 years from now to get closer to 6 years? What should you do in the next 12 months, in the next 9 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 3 months? What should you do today? So, we sort of create a thread to the ultimate vision, but these aren't, you can't really call them objectives, because they're really almost smaller vision statements. They created a dissatisfaction between a current and a desired reality. And then, of course, the strategy should address that with change. It should tell us, well, these are if we want to have a Mars colony, then we should change the following things. Or we should develop the following technologies, or we should get the following sponsorship. So you start getting direction in where you want to go. But the operations are still going. They're still running. The processes are still flowing. I've never seen an organization that stops because there's no strategy. The cleaner cleans. So while you are chasing this future, you need to run the day-to-day things, and that's where the level 0 model comes in. It helps us to keep a consistency there in terms of what we're supposed to do and why we exist. So as Cam said earlier, the purpose would be tied to the level 0 model. So the purpose would predominantly drive your operations, whereas your intent, your desire would drive your strategy. And we need to have some balance between these two things. Going into the future and putting bread on the table today is a very hard equilibrium to manage in organizational life.
Thank you. So for both of you, I'm going to start go back to Cam now. I think there's something about complexity. There's something about complexity in terms of both ideas. So the simple question I have for both of you is, starting with Cam, is, can you really avoid complexity in terms of being able to apply these great ideas?
The quick answer is no. You cannot avoid complexity. Organizations are complex beasts. I mean, the number of processes that are involved in running an organization, Derek mentioned 60 to 80, and then you get into a multinational company. We're talking about a lot of processes, and within each process is a set of activities, and within each activity is a set of tasks, and within each task is a set of subtasks. So my point is, there's always going to be complexity. That's just something we all need to deal with and try to work around and try to minimize the complexity as much as possible. And sometimes we can't work around it or minimize it. And if it's an important area, then we absolutely need to embrace the complexity and just deal with it. But in other cases, and the balanced scorecard and strategy maps can be really helpful, is we see that, hey, we're putting too much emphasis on that area of the company. Like I mentioned, the analog devices, they were putting too much emphasis on really complex areas like cost per unit. You know, and just a reminder, their value proposition was market leadership. They were supposed to be first to market, and here they are measuring all these really minute efficiency metrics. That's an example of complexity you can just simply avoid. You don't need to tackle it. There's no value in it for an organization like that. So back to Mookie's question, can we avoid complexity? No. We need to embrace it initially to get a sense of how much complexity we're dealing with, and then try to either work around the complexity or try to optimize the level of complexity.
Eric?
No, I agree. I agree with Cam. You can't avoid the complexity. It's organizations are complex things. I think the challenge is that to take a complexity of design and turn it into a simplicity of presentation. I think that's the challenge. You know, if you look at the iPod, it's a simple thing, but there's immense complexity behind it. So the challenge is in presenting something in a simplistic way, but without losing any of the complexity. It's like Cam said, you could dissect the organization infinitely, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, it's like a human. I could say, well, what do you have? You've got a skin and organs, and you've got molecules and atoms. It could go on forever, but you know, we've got to stop at a place which makes sense. So I think to put complexity into systems which does not make sense is you know, it's an inefficiency. So there's a point where you have to stop.
Mookie,
Okay,
may I add something to my own answer? I'd be remiss
please.
if I didn't use an actual example we've been using all day of reducing complexity, because I mentioned the balanced scorecard. One of the knocks against it is it's overly complex and tedious. And so now my position is we should eliminate the balanced scorecard and substitute it with OKRs, because you get the same value with less complexity. So I just wanted to throw in that specific example of how we can't avoid complexity because OKRs are still complex, but we can reduce it.
Okay, thank you. For those of you with us, please just be patient. We're soon going to get to the opportunity for you to ask questions and to participate in the dialogue, which is something that we really want to happen. So I'm going to go back to Derek and say, for me, when I'm learning, I've not applied the balanced scorecard as much as I have now with Orgtology. But learning about the balanced scorecard, a lot of what it came down to for me, the reason why it was an idea whose time had come is because it was able to take the over-reliance on the financial measures. You know, people looked at just the statement and look at the companies, you know, mostly from that. I don't think it was exclusively, but mostly from that. But now you have this idea coming and say there are other issues, there are other things in the organization. It's like going under the hood a little bit. I mean, before you get to the financials, you have to have good people. You have to have good processes. You have to have things work on an internal basis. And so they were able to capture something that that at the time nobody had thought about, nobody had sort of looked into. So as far as Orgtology is concerned, what do you want? What do you see in terms of passing the baton? I kind of feel like, you know, we are saying it's time for the balanced scorecard to pass the baton to Orgtology. Great, like a relay race. You know, we're not saying the balanced scorecard there's anything wrong with it. We just feel like it's time to pass the baton to Orgtology. Please just talk to people as to why you think Orgtology is an idea whose time has come. You know, in essence, relative to the balanced scorecard.
I think we're entering a world of super organizations in sports, in politics, in countries. You know, it's the battle for the X factor is massive. It's you know, with artificial intelligence on the block, so many things are going to be centralized. And I mean, we're already all using the same office system. You know, we use Word, and and Excel and so forth. We're doing a lot of the same stuff already, and these are all, that's what technology does. So that small part which makes the organization unique is what it's going to be about. That's the contribution of the human intelligence. That's something that artificial intelligence cannot do. You know, it doesn't have emotion. Julius Caesar didn't govern the world because he had a good algorithm. He did so because he had a lust for power. He was greedy. You know, that's what moved the whole Roman Empire. So the X factor is something that's going to have to be more worked with, more cultivated, and I believe that Orgtology has the necessary complexity of design to contain that, but also the simplicity of presentation to help people to do that in a simple way. So we're not confusing what we're doing to change the organization, what we're doing to run the organization, but the way we run the organization should be conducive to how we want to change it. And jointly, the interaction between those two things would create an X factor. The X factor, I think, literally lies in that equilibrium. So I do believe that organizations that use the Orgtology method would be more able to merge with technology, as this is becoming the thing it would probably be for the next 50 years. And it also you know, gives people the certainty of design, but also the ability to be a bit chaotic, to have new ideas, to be innovative, to influence. You know, typically we're currently working with a client where they just established a transformation and an innovation unit, and what we've done there is created the processes so that all the intelligence flows in there. So immediately, you know, they would know when something strategic needs to happen. That's the type of thing. But you know, I don't want to say passing the baton. I don't think that's the right. If you have a small guy who's starting a stationery in his garage, to bother him with the things that I've been talking about here would not make sense. You know, that person would just need objectives and specific plans on how to execute those objectives. So, you know, you wouldn't want to burden small plants with too much complexity. So that would be a downside of the Orgtology on the Orgtology side.
Thank you, Derek. What do you say, Prof?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything Derek said. Something I should mention, and I think I touched on this last time we chatted, is it would be really neat to do a field study with an organization that was open to Orgtology, but also open to strategy mapping. Because those two tools, I think, if they were introduced together in an organization, the synergies could be unlimited between the two. Because the way I see it is that Orgtology would be the centerpiece of the strategy map. And it would like create a set of neural networks that it connects the entire organization. And for someone like me who looks at things through a certain strategic lens, I would be able to see and tell people and demonstrate how the Orgtology, how the X factor is unfolding and making this organization a better place. And we could do that using objectives and key results to do that.
Okay, thank you. I think we've spoken enough. The people in the dialogue have spoken enough. I would like to now open the floor and ask the people who have, joined us to feel free to give comments, to ask questions, and just give their own insight on the whole dialogue, between the two methodologies, the balance scorecard with the addition of the strategy map and OKR and Orgtology. So we're looking forward. We're waiting for you guys. It's your turn. Can everybody hear me? Hi, Matthias. I know you're here. Matthias is one of my, somebody's raised their hand. Yes. Go ahead, Fabian.
Well, I'm in a public area, that's why there's a background noise. So I'll be limited in communication.
Okay,
Thank
all
you,
right.
Doctor. Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, and then we'll go to Fabian.
All right. I just want to thank Dr. Cameron for his available time. This is the second time we have a meeting with him. This means we like him. If it's the second time, this means we like him. And what he contributes adds value to our learning. And I just want to ask him a question related to different business models other than the balanced scorecard, let's say. Do you think, Dr. Cameron, that some of the business models that are now out of date and they need to be reviewed or, let's say, revised, or they should take a different form of application or implementation?
Yeah, so certainly there are some that go out of date. And that's not really a criticism of the tool. It's just it had a certain time and place. And, you know, business is a lot different than it was 20, 40, 100 years ago, right? So as business changes, certain platforms and techniques we use are going to become less desirable. And the balanced scorecard certainly is one of those models that has become antiquated. And then some other models, the more generic a model is, usually the more it can stick around. So you look at Porter's 5 forces, for example, or a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those kinds of tools will be around forever because they don't have a lot of detail involved. Whereas the balanced scorecard, the reason it became outdated was because we could get the same amount of informational value without the complexity anymore. And so that happens once in a while with tools. I can't think of another specific tool. Well, actually, there is a tool I can think of that had its time and place, and it's called EVA, economic value added. And it was the rage for a while, and then it just tailed off because it was too complex. So I think the more complex a tool is, the more likely it is to lose popularity after a certain time. And also the more likely it is that it'll be substituted by something that's simpler. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Fabian, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Let me first of all appreciate Mr. Matthias and the organizers for this very wonderful concept. As a matter of fact, we were just introduced to this concept today. And when this was made known to us, we are imagining what this was all about. We came from Nigeria. We are now in Doha in Qatar for a conference, for a training. And Matthias introduced us to this wonderful concept. And we fell in love with the name first. And then we went deep into what it is about. And from what I've been part of this evening, I must admit that this is one of the best things I've learned leaving Nigeria and coming all the way to Doha. Because I never in my life imagined that there was something that by this name. And when he wrote it, the first thing that came to my mind was a medical concept. And all of us, 3 of us from Nigeria, Ashura, Ghani, Ibrahim, and we're all anxious. We wanted to know what is this about. And he went deep, and I could see that from every speaker, that this association, this group of people, is a group of very enlightened, intellectual individuals who are really very sound in this particular field. And if any organization is handed over to them, they could turn it upside down and make it a very successful organization. I have seen In fact, I'm just imagining so many things. When I had the first speaker, the second speaker, I was seeing how the re-engineering, even in my organization, through this little time that I've shared with you, less than 2 hours. And I don't have a question, but I just want to commend you. I wish I could also be a member. I know that you are few globally, and I can't really see anybody around through the list. I'm not sure there is anybody from Nigeria. I don't know whether the host is an African. Otherwise, I would have said I'm not sure whether there's anybody from Africa. But I'm happy to be part of this. I wish I could continue to be a member of this particular organization. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Fabian, we're coming to Nigeria. Don't worry. I'm from Sierra Leone, so you're not very far from me. So we're coming to Nigeria. But thank you for the comments. I'll throw it to Derek and to Cam to give their own comments. But I'm definitely excited to hear what you said.
Do you want me to start, Derek, and then you finish?
Sure, go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, so I guess these are the concluding comments. So in conclusion, I think that Orgtology has a really bright future. And, you know, like I mentioned before, I look at things through a certain strategic lens. And I think if we married my strategy mapping and made Orgtology the centerpiece of the strategy map, what would happen is, it's like, to use a silly analogy, it's like gasoline and fertilizer. You're going to have something special happen, not in a destructive way, though, in a positive, explosive way, if we were to combine these tools. And it would be really interesting to have a field study where we actually get to do that, or at least a partial field study. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope I've summarized and made clear some of the strategic areas I follow and how they can contribute to Orgtology. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the kind comments, everyone.
Derek?
Yeah, I think that Orgtology, like any theory, is in a phase where it's moving from complexity to simplicity. You know, we need to start simplifying things. I doubt if another discussion on this would really bear fruits. You know, I think we've talked about as much as we can. I would love to accept Cam's generous offer to maybe take a few of our clients that are working on Orgtology strategies and study them and see how we can create strategy maps around this. And I think that could be the beginning of a good study. You know, maybe we could publish something in that regard as well. So I think that would be the next step, is to do something practical, to take real life clients, people who are driving their strategies, people who need this, you know, who need their strategies to be executed, and then get Cam on board and let's see how we can implement the tools. But thank you very much for the opportunity, Mookie. Appreciate it. Thanks, Cam. It's great.
Yeah, Vincent, your hand was up. I know it's down now, but your hand was up, Vincent. Please go ahead.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Mookie, and thank you, Professor and Derek. My name is Vincent from Uganda, East Africa. I have worked with both concepts. I've worked with the balance scorecard, and I recently been introduced to the Orgtology. I think the balance scorecard at the time when it came was a very useful tool. But having worked now with the Orgtology, particularly the appreciation of the hypothesis 2x, you get a little more elasticity in terms of the application, right from hypothesis 2x and how it can be applied to the different perspectives of the organization. So I feel that the Orgtology gives a much more rigorous application of the concept, particularly when you see the elasticity that whenever you want to do anything within the organization, you want to do strategy development, it is applicable. You want to do leadership development, it is applicable. You want to do organizational review or structural design, the same hypothesis 2x becomes very easily applicable. That's the comment I needed to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm going to echo that because this is one of the interesting things for me. This is one of the things that fascinated me the most when I was learning this and when we're applying this. There's a nice theory, a nice hypothesis that looks at the organization in a way that I can understand. I can see it. I mean, anybody who works in an organization knows that you have operations and you have strategy. Sometimes both of them may not be working at the same time. Some people, small business, for example, a lot of small business people don't look at so much the change side of things. But I think, you have the concrete and the abstract. You can see it in organizations. You can see that this is something organizations need to do. And throughout the application, when you go to organizational design, when you go to strategy, when you go to different areas of talk about leadership, management, all of that is predicated on hypothesis 2x. And so you follow everything from the beginning all the way to the end. And hypothesis 2x is through all of them. And it helps to understand, and it's practical, and you can see that an organization is both a concrete and an abstract. It's operations and strategy throughout the time. So for me, that's one of the strengths of being able to use and apply the Orgtology method. Is there anybody else? Let me see. I see somebody put a. Okay, Prof. Somebody it said, please share your contact. Prof. Scholey.
Oh,
There's a request for you to share your contact. We'll
can
find
you, Mookie, do you have contact information for everyone? You can send out my information.
Yeah, so we'll try and organize. Claudia's here. This is from Google. If you can please reach out to Claudia, we would appreciate that so we can then be able to link you and Prof.
That way everyone has access to it.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Comments? Thoughts? Something to share? All right. I think that we've been going at this for an hour. I think we've gotten a lot of what we can get. I want to thank everybody that has been here. I would like to thank, starting with the people who organized. I mean, the Org expert group. At least the face of the organizing team has been, Claudia Hendrikz. Claudia, thank you for helping to put all of this together. Thank you to you and your team. Thank you to everybody who has come to help us to make this, to learn more about this two concepts. I wish you well in all your business ventures. And for everybody who is interested, we definitely welcome hearing from you and telling you more about the Orgtology method. So thank you very much. I don't know if there's anything else that Derek or Professor Scholey would like to say.
No, I don't think there's any point for me to start bringing up a new topic or anything. I just, again, will thank everyone for attending. Hope you found it useful, and thank you for the kind comments that I heard.
Derek?
Same here. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. It was good. It's the second time that we're having this dialogue. Thanks so much, and we'll see you guys again, maybe next time with a new topic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, wherever you are. Good afternoon, if you're in a different part of the world. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.